Hi, I'm Elias Stahl, the CEO and co-founder of Hilos, and I'm joined today by Jasmine Maietta. Now, Jasmine is a born storyteller, having helped build some of today's most powerful brands like Under Armour and Peloton. A little over a year ago, she left these jobs and founded Round 21, a company focused on blending the self-expression of art with the community of sport. Jasmine, thanks for making the time.
Thank you.
Well, so we were just talking, I imagine going from building a brand at an Under Armour or a Peloton to starting your own company is like going from unlimited resources and many constraints to very limited resources and really nothing constraining you. So what have you done differently when building the Round 21 brand?
Yeah, well, I'll be very specific that actually I left Peloton in April of this year. So it started as an idea in 2019, but what I'm learning about myself through this entrepreneurial journey is sometimes I want to crawl, walk, run a little bit because ripping the Band-Aid off of the comforts of corporate America to go off and do your own thing can absolutely be intimidating. But there were resources where I was before, but I would say there are different resources as an entrepreneur, and there were constraints where I am now, but I think there are constraints where I was in corporate America. And so what I found when I decided to take this entrepreneurial leap was the opportunity really needs to be about sequencing things that need to take the time to grow into the future and not trying to do everything at once. And I think when you break down the opportunity that you're going after in a way that first establishes what you have available to you and maximizing what you have available to you, which for me was honestly just the expertise of sporting goods and an understanding of the athletic-minded consumer, you can actually sequence and take steps towards growing into what will become a business. So I've been really conscious of trying not to leap to where I want to be, but more consciously thinking about what I know and what I have in front of me and thinking about the steps that I need to grow into as I grow forward.
So isn't one of the perennial problems of a startup the fact that so many things need to be built at once, right? You're wearing 60 different hats. You need to build a brand and you need to start marketing it, but there's also product and there's partnerships and distribution. So I hear what you're saying, focus is key. I'm sure it's a challenge though. How have you been able to go about that from the start?
So fundamentally, I really love that kind of puppeteering or orchestration of the various parts of the business. So that might just be specific to me. I know not all entrepreneurs are like that, but I think it's very important early in the journey to absolutely understand how every piece of the business works, so that when you do have the capital or the time to hire someone who may have more expertise, you absolutely understand what you're asking from them.
Yeah.
So although it's a catch-all, I think I'm not the type of person that dedicates Tuesday to finance and supply chain, or always on Friday reconciles, what the marketing for the next week needs to be. I'm much more of a juggler, but I think being aware of the blind spots of what you're learning and what you're doing is very, very important. And so for me, what I'm doing related to marketing and brand management is what I've spent the past 20 years doing, but what I'm learning is around supply chain and distribution. And so I take a little more time making sure that I'm not assuming anything, and have a lot of advisors and people I can ask questions to, people in your network and, your co-founder as well.
Do you find yourself gravitating toward what you're strongest in, or are you masochistically throwing yourself into the deep end there?
I'm not getting the choice to not go into the deep end. I mean, everything from the simplest change on Shopify to importing product for the first time. I mean, all I think I do with the things I don't know how to do is make sure that I have the time to learn it, or pause and think about who in my network might have done this before. I'll give you an example. I'm building a business related to bringing art to sport. And what that could be long-term is a variety of sports, a variety of artists, a variety of tiered distribution. So the first thing I did was call a merchandising teammate from 6 years ago at Under Armour and say, how would you structure this? And it just helped me understand how to build the house, as he said.
Yeah.
And then I started to think about, okay, what room do I go after first? So trying to think about the people in your network that may have gone through it before, or maybe know someone, that's been very successful for me.
Huh. Well, and I imagine corporate America is all about specialization. And here you have to manage a breadth of specialization, either within yourself or your network. So it's allowed for that kind of approach, the approach of a specialist with something as kind of nascent and early as a startup, which is, I think, inspiring. It's definitely something I've seen a lot of founders fall down on. So is there any, as someone who hasn't come from corporate America, who's just starting, who's always been in small businesses, who's always had that breadth, what advice would you give them in terms of the focus you've adapted to build your company?
I would say the first thing is, if you're a founder who has been the ninja or the Swiss Army knife, what is your passion, the skill that you've acquired that you can prioritize? Somebody forced you to force rank finance, supply chain, operations, brand, force rank. What are you good at? What are you passionate about? What specifically your business, because of the differentiation or because of the opportunity that you've set your eyes on, can benefit greatest from? I would think about applying energy there. There's a philosophy in Japanese culture called ikigai. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it basically is saying as purposeful as we can be in our life around the mission, what you're skilled at, what you feel like you can provide to the world, and what you can get paid for. If you can find that triangulation, you actually are going to feel very fulfilled, but also fulfill society as well. I think you can apply that to the ability to focus in one part of the business if you've been more of a generalist in the past.
So the Strength Finder guys just ripped off the Japanese. That's what you're
saying.
Oh,
maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. No, that's great. It's definitely something that, going into a co-founder relationship for the first time was really interesting for me, figuring out who was a specialist and who was a generalist in which situation. And something I think a lot of people view co-founders as the perfect balance. You want that kind of salt and pepper, but a lot of times you need to speak the same language and be aligned, in the trenches as well when making very meaningful decisions for the business. So it's definitely something that continues to be an evolution. That's for sure. I'm sure one that you've witnessed. Well, moving on to Round 21, though, what was the genesis of Round 21, and why is now the time?
The genesis was very simply witnessing, in 20 years of working in sports, and actually started my first job out of college I played professional basketball overseas. And so I've always been in this locker room to boardroom culture around sports and fitness. And I kept witnessing these athletic minded people expressing who they are through their hoodies, including myself, by the way, through their hoodies or their footwear.
Yeah.
And what remained core to their identity, what they play with, basketball, backboard, baseball bat, ping pong paddle, was a blank canvas. And that thing that's so core to their identity is what my hypothesis is, be the most significantly representative of who they are, because it's where their passion lies greatest. So I want to bring art, which is an expressive tool, to the things that people play with to satisfy what I think is a human need, which is to have identity and to have story that we're putting out into the world in order to be accepted.
Yeah. Well, there's never been a more necessary time for identity and storytelling. I feel we all feel that way now, right? There's a cacophony of voices, and it's hard to find your own identity within that. It's a beautiful vision. You're right. I've never thought of it before, but why is every baseball bat, blank? Why has no one thought of this before?
I have no idea, other than the industry, very similar to the industry you're building a brand in, has thought about the function of the product before the ethos or the story or the narrative. And I think when you look at cultures like Japanese culture, I don't know why I'm bringing it up again, but
it's a great culture. We can bring it up. Yeah.
There is something very inspiring about functional art. Or even I remember, call it 20 years ago, when Target launched a line of tea kettles with Michael Graves that had this beautiful design and story, or even Steve Jobs with the iPhone. I think things can look beautiful, but also be functional too. And that's really the insight behind Round 21.
Yeah. Well, from a design perspective, we're really moving very quickly as a society. It seems like things were beautiful in the 50s in a lot of ways, and then we kind of deteriorated into what became the 80s and 90s. And then where we're finding that aesthetic, charm or spark. And, I don't mean to knock the 80s and the 90s. They were great in other ways, terrible in a lot of ways. The 50s were hard, every decade has its own problems and its own beautiful design. But I think that resonates, bringing design and a design-centered ethos to something as organic and as identity-focused as sport.
Yeah.
Well, so what has the journey been so far?
Yeah, so the journey's been rocky, I'll be honest. So when I was side hustling around 21, while I was at Peloton, it was very much when I could find the time, but I knew that the product needed to have the same functional characteristics that were available today. So I started with a sport that is extremely accessible and honestly very nostalgic for millions of people, which is ping pong.
Yeah.
That I thought, what a great canvas for art, the paddle, the ball, the table. And I've quickly learned that it is absolutely an accessible sport, but it does tend to be something that's enjoyed in the kind of culture of wide open spaces. And so suburban homes or dorms or offices. And so when COVID hit, I left Peloton to focus on this full time, thinking about how social distancing, but also the need to stay connected could be achieved by safe play. Ping pong is 9 feet away, but that we also needed sports that were available everywhere. And so we just launched mini hoop backboards for holiday, actually, that are, not the Nerf hoops from yesteryear where it was a cardboard backboard, but something that's, very functional, shatterproof backboard and steel rim, but with beautiful art in the background. So I feel really excited that now we have an assortment of sports products that people can enjoy in a variety of different formats. But I had to learn from the months beforehand what was available to me, what was available to people, and with that learning obviously comes some investment in time and resources. But I'm really excited about where we are today.
That's incredible. I love the backboard idea. I think I got to get one of those for my. I mean, I need something to do outside of the house, so I think that'll get me out there. How do you find artists? Are they finding you? Is it like a Spotify situation where you're a platform that will showcase their art and give them, dividends per purchase? How does that work?
Yeah, so from an identification perspective, my canvas is sports. So it's very important to me that I don't kind of mistake that this is some sort of fine art environment that can play to every type of art that's in the world. We are an expressive and recreational brand. And so there are artists who have the ability to convey an idea or a message in a small format, ball, paddle, etc., but who also have an uplifting spirit and quality to what their work is, which Round 21 is 51% glass half full. Like, we just do see the world through an optimistic lens.
Yeah.
So we look for artists who are emerging. We look for artists that reinforce our multicultural diaspora of who we are as a brand. We want to reflect equity in the arts. And there are some instances where artists are coming to us. But right now we're so small that we really want to be choiceful about who we bring on, because the heartbeat of the artist is going to come through the product and the narrative. From a business model perspective, you asked, it's early days. I think there are all sorts of ways that artists can benefit from working with Round 21. Absolutely, we're a platform for the expressiveness that they want to put in the world. Absolutely, we believe in compensating the artists. In some senses, that could be a flat fee for the license to existing art. It could be commissioning new artwork. And if the economics worked out, it absolutely could be a royalty structure. But we're a human brand, so we take every case on a one-to-one basis, and we make sure that it works for the artist and for us.
No, that's incredible. And I'm obviously, knowing a little bit about, what Hylos is focusing on, immediately my mind goes to, you could have 6 or 10 different designs from different artists and a blank paddle, and printers already function on kind of an on-demand custom service that would allow you to offer more artwork and to a diversity of taste without paying for it in advance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We could do that. We're going to be looking at all different ways to structure supply chain that feels like relevant product is in the market at the right time, but that the consumer also feels like they have a choice. Those are two things that can work together. We're seeing a lot of modern brands approach fast fashion or customization in ways that doesn't just feel like upload a picture of your cat drinking beer, the way that I would say the
Yeah.
DIY market was 10 years ago. And we look to be a leader in that space.
Yeah, well, I do miss those cat with beer pictures. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think we're in a moment where retail and brands are changing in a really interesting way. I think we learned this year that if it's not already on a boat or in a warehouse, we're not going to get it when something like a global pandemic happens, or when there's just a rapid change in sentiment, or rapid change in needs and preferences. Everything functions on this 12 to 18 month timeline. That is, well, our lives are at a digital pace. And so there's this disconnect that really needs to be addressed fundamentally. And the brands that do that and are able to do it in a human way, I think like yours, they're going to be the brands that thrive in this century.
I hope so. I would say the ability to understand the human need, it has never been more at a premium. I saw footwear brands launch face masks. I saw delivery companies delivering, like TaskRabbit's approach to the pandemic, to me, is a case study for pick an institution in a year. They pivoted so fast around the service that they provided, achieving what humans needed at the time, which was food and access to medical care. I think my brand, Round 21, isn't servicing the level of need that we saw, call it March, April, and even now. But what we can do is approach what the recreational need is for an environment, which, in this case was 9 feet apart. I say 9 because 6 might be too little, 12 might be too much. Yeah. And we quickly added the new model of the backboards in order to achieve that. But to me, the learning was diversification. I think consumers and supply chain is too unreliable for a variety of reasons: economic challenges, external factors you can't control, weather, hurricane, tsunami, pandemic. That having a diversified supply chain, geographic diversification, products, as well as consumer segmentation as well, potentially, if coming from some of the other companies I've worked for, if a crisis hits that doesn't fit one of the consumer bases that you service, you need to have other consumers who still know where you're coming from. So that's a philosophy that Round 21's taking into 2021.
Well, what you're doing with your audience, those that are becoming a part of the Round 21 family, it's really community building, right? There's a social element to it. So how has that changed? You talked about the product itself and differentiating, but what about building a community during COVID? How does that change your marketing strategy, or just how the company acts as a whole?
Yeah, so I'd say my brand, we call ourselves the new recreation, equality, and creativity. We couldn't rely on recreation, which is really people coming together in real life and enjoying a moment. But we have other parts of our narrative: equality and creativity. And so our community this year has been focused on self-expression, and there was a very strong emphasis around, and will continue, but really vocal and public around social justice. The NBA commissioned paddles for the NBA bubble, ping pong paddles, because there was a ping pong culture there that spoke to social justice, which was a piece of their larger platform. We were glad to be able to service that particular need. I think in 2021, Round 21 is coming off of a successful Kickstarter, and our founding member group is community. And so we're looking to be very purposeful around communicating with them, engaging them in where the brand is going, making them understand that they have access to us to support new artist recommendations, new product design, and potentially what sports we go into next. So community never has to be one-dimensional, just my consumer. It can be the community of employees, it can be the community of the investors that are involved in your business, or it can be the community of the consumers or the artists in my case. And so we're looking at it from that perspective.
No, I love that. And I'm sure you're already getting artists coming at you saying, now, when can I do a baseball? When can I do X or Y? Right? They're waiting for the next product launches.
Everybody's got an opinion, because we started in ping pong. I have the cohort that wants us to go into pickleball next, because we added basketball. They really want us to do outdoor hoops next. And I'm like, those are like so heavy and like shipping. So what we want to do is be consumer centric, and consumers are influenced by a certain small handful of sports first. In culture, basketball influences culture, fashion, music, etc. So we have a long way to go before we maximize that sport. But yeah, I do think the concept of Round 21 is fairly elastic across many end uses, and we're excited about the journey ahead.
Well, I'm sure you knew before focusing on ping pong as your initial instrument that Gaia, my co-founder, went to the ping pong Olympics, right? And is from an Olympian family, apparently, of ping pong players. So I think Israel, along with China, tends to be one of these countries that takes it very seriously. So as soon as she found out about Round 21, this was her. There would be no other paddle company, and I think there's a lot of people like her that are waiting, that are passionate enthusiasts and are waiting for this. So.
Yeah, what I love about the table tennis, ping pong fan, spectator, recreationalist, hobbyist, competitor is they do understand where Round 21 sits in their world. I mean, Gaia and her brother and others who are world class do not see Round 21 replacing their competitive paddle, but they do see an unmet need, which is really fun, which is, I love this activity. I love to engage with my friends. This is a way for me to have fun and look good too. And I love that it says something about who they are. Hopefully one day, the entire industry will recognize that self-expression is a human need. But until then, we are excited to offer the alternative.
Well, Round 21, I mean, 2021 is your year. So what are the plans, just for everyone watching, what are the plans for 2021 for Round 21, and where can they find you? I think right now you're still have a Kickstarter that's active and will be for a little more time. Is that right?
We got 4 days left. Yep. And those founding members are getting the word out. And I'd say 2021 absolutely is aiming to be a big year for the brand. We have broken down the year, and we have contingencies around if the world opens back up when. But very simply put, what 2020 was reactive and basically educate, like 101 for me and learning. And instead of saying, okay, now this is what we're going to do, we basically said every month we have a sense of seasonality, we have a sense of adoption of our product, and we have a sense of distribution. What artists and stories do we think are going to be meaningful to the world? And let's do it. And if it doesn't work out, we have a test, adapt, and learn and go approach. But we actually have mapped it out, and it feels so much more comforting. Even if it doesn't work as planned, it does feel good. I think I've always believed a bad plan is better than no plan.
You and Teddy Roosevelt, you know?
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, excellent.
I thought, you're quoting him directly now.
I didn't know that. Well, I probably picked it up somewhere, but I do believe in that. I think intention can get you only so far, but at least it has purpose. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. And then we're so lucky that 21 is in every month. So what's happening on the 21st of every month will be important. What's happening on 2/1/21, February 1st is going to be important. So we're excited about creating the lore of the brand next year.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. That's an incredible opportunity. Well, I mean, I think there's no better time for this. And really, if you can survive 2020 as a startup, then I feel like, if you're strong in the lean years, you're flourishing in the really great years. So anyone that gets past this and is able to grow from it, has the character to become, I think, what we all need, that fusion of community and art. And it's incredible to get to see already what you've been able to do. And I can't wait for my basketball to come around. So
exactly. We'll get you there. I appreciate this opportunity so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. For everyone that's listening, Google Round 21, find it on Kickstarter, only available for 4 more days. We have to post this before it ends so that people still have a chance. If not, I'm sure if you reach out to Jasmine, she'll follow up with you. And if you want to learn more about Hilos and what we're up to, you can find us at Hilos Shoes on Instagram or hilos.co. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.